In the 1960s, Hollywood made some of the wildest war films ever shot. Movies with real train crashes, productions interrupted by actual Soviet tanks, and Charlton Heston literally pulling a sword on his drunken director. And because the box office was jammed with other stuff, a lot of these just disappeared. These are the underrated 60s war films you probably haven't seen, but you really should. This is Peckinpah's first big swing at a studio war picture. On paper, it's a Western crossed with a war movie. Charlton Heston leads a ragtag bunch of soldiers across the border into Mexico, chasing down Apache raiders. It's got everything: massive cavalry charges, river crossings, the sense that nobody in command has any clue what they're doing. And you've got legends everywhere: Heston, Richard Harris, Jim Hutton, James Coburn. The movie is about revenge, but also about pride, ego, and command falling apart. The chaos you see on screen is real, because it was chaos behind the camera too. Peckinpah refused to finish on schedule, fought with the producer, and the whole thing ran way over budget. Charlton Heston was so fed up he pulled a sword on Peckinpah. Literally. The studio freaked out, took the film away, chopped it up, and released something Peckinpah barely recognized. And you feel that when you watch it, something's missing. Scenes don't quite connect. Peckinpah later called it one of the most painful things that ever happened in my life. When you see it being mutilated and cut to pieces, it's like losing a child or something. King Rat is a completely different beast. Set in a Japanese prisoners of war camp, it follows George Segal's Corporal King. He's a wheeler dealer surviving by his wits, trading, bribing, and scheming his way through the worst conditions imaginable. The tension comes not from combat, but from the daily grind of just staying alive, and the way the camp brings out the absolute worst and best in people. And it's honest. This is not your usual heroic war film. It's cynical, and makes no attempt to clean up what being a prisoner back then really meant. Some of the cast, like Denholm Elliott, had been prisoners in real life. Elliott, who plays Lieutenant Colonel Larkin, was actually shot down and captured in World War II. King Rat had the misfortune of coming out at the wrong time. American audiences wanted clean war stories with happy endings, not this. And yeah, the box office flopped, even though it was up for an Oscar for cinematography. Director Brian Forbes summed it up best: whatever chance it had was thrown away by run-of-the-mill and basically dishonest exploitation. But if you want a war film that doesn't lie to you, one that's just about survival and the class divides that come out when everyone's desperate, King Rat is it. Outnumbered, surrounded, odds stacked. That's kind of the recipe for a good war movie, right? Except this time it's not Nazis or the usual villains, it's the Boxers in China, 1900. And this is the best movie you'll ever see about the Boxer Rebellion, not that there's a lot of competition. When Hollywood needed someone to handle a rebellion, they just called Charlton Heston. And here he is, teaming up with David Niven, defending Peking with a crew of soldiers from 10 different countries, all the foreign embassies in China at the time. It's weirdly fun to see all these different uniforms, like some kind of Olympics opening ceremony, but with more gunfire. If you're watching it at home, be warned. Like every Charlton Heston epic, this thing has an intermission. It's long, but there's a lot more action than you'd expect. Plenty of siege scenes, storming the castle type stuff, all that. Heston's character, Major Matt Lewis, was loosely based on John Twiggs Myers, who really did run the Marine Guard during the siege. And if you're wondering, yeah, the film was banned in China. Not exactly a surprise. Next up, The Bridge at Remagen. It's about the real battle for the Ludendorff Bridge. Americans trying to capture it, Germans trying to destroy it. What makes this one memorable isn't just the story, it's what happened during production. They filmed in Czechoslovakia, back when that meant behind the Iron Curtain. Then, in the middle of shooting, the Soviets invaded. Actual tanks rolling into Prague, and the crew basically has to flee the country with the film reels. The local government accuses them of sabotage, the insurance doesn't cover acts of war, and suddenly the budget goes off the rails. $5 million in climbing. United Artists wanted a patriotic World War II movie and got a logistical nightmare. It made under $2 million in the US, didn't even get its budget back. The cast, George Segal, Robert Vaughn, Ben Gazzara, is solid, but nobody saw it. Most people only remember the movie because they somehow finished it in the middle of a real invasion. This one's almost worth watching just for the cast. Not a bad war movie either, and Siegel's a really underrated director. Came out right as McQueen was turning into a star, which is probably why you haven't heard of it. Steve McQueen was a total nightmare on set. Classic McQueen, fighting with the director, drinking, ignoring instructions. Midway through filming, Paramount slashed the budget, so they reused the same little patch of land for every single battle and literally ran out of film before shooting the finale. That abrupt ending isn't artsy, they just couldn't afford to film the script. Screenwriter Robert Pirosh was supposed to direct, but he fought with McQueen so much they replaced him with Siegel. The original script was way darker, way more black comedy, but almost none of that made it in. Director Siegel had a pretty bleak take on all of it. No side wins a war. Both sides pray to the same God. War is senseless. You definitely get that mood here. Nobody's really a hero and there's not much glory to go around. Most people know McQueen from The Great Escape, but he did a few war movies in the 60s and this is probably the most underrated. The Sand Pebbles is barely mentioned anymore, but it's worth tracking down. The Sand Pebbles is set in the 1920s China. McQueen's playing an engineer on a gunboat and the cast is mostly Asian actors, though the casting was, let's say, not very accurate. Hollywood just hired anyone vaguely Asian for most roles. McQueen is excellent on screen, but he made the shoot a nightmare, clashing with director Robert Wise, refusing to shoot scenes, just being stubborn. The film stirred up controversy over its politics. Some people thought it was too pro-American, others called it anti-war. But Kevin Costner actually called it a perfect movie. He once said this was the movie that made him start paying attention to cinema as an art form. He called it a great McQueen role in a film that actually taught him a lot about movies. The Train with Burt Lancaster is probably one of the best underrated war films from the 60s. It's dark, way ahead of its time, and it's actually a little disturbing in spots. Frankenheimer's direction is fantastic. Lots of visual flair, and you can tell they really went for it with the action. The train raid scenes are just insane. They did everything for real. Full-scale train wrecks, live dynamite. You can actually see shockwaves run through the ground. The train crash isn't a miniature. They crashed a real train, no safety measures, no stunt doubles, and people got hurt. Lancaster did all his own stunts even after he busted up his knee. He was 50, still climbing all over moving trains, postponing surgery just to get the shots. Frankenheimer nearly got himself killed a couple times too. They filmed in France, in places that still had live ammo buried from the war. You think about what could have gone wrong, it's actually a miracle nobody died. The budget was almost $7 million and they barely made it back in the US, about $3 million. It did better overseas, but not exactly a hit. But for what it is, The Train is just on another level. Definitely one of those movies you have to see at least once.